Welcome. This is the last in our spring 2017 Call 300 Visitor Series. My name's Gene Tracy. I'm director of the Center for Liberal Arts. Just to remind you, if you forgot what this is all about, the Campus Call 300 visitors bring the world to William & Mary. That's what Call 300 is all about, engaging our liberal arts education with the wider world. They aspire to stimulate a fruitful experience of disorientation that allows students to see their own lives in a broader perspective. Now, to ensure that in any given semester that the visitors in the series are interrogating, that it's possible for the associated courses to have some academic coherence, we ask them to speak to a particular theme. And the theme for this semester is unrest. And I think you'll agree that the topic of today's visit and conversation fits that theme extraordinarily well. So given the theme, we then ask a lot of our Call 300 visitors. We ask them to spend several days with us here on campus. They don't just get up and give a 1-hour talk. They visit classrooms, they engage with our students and faculty, and we ask them to give a lot from their heart, not just their mind. So again, I think we'll find that our guests tonight fit that bill perfectly. So I'm just up here to kind of get the ball rolling, so to do that, I'd first like to acknowledge some people who helped make today's event possible. In particular, CLA fellow Sylvia Tandasiars, who I saw here earlier. Sylvia, there you are, Sylvia. Thank you. Wonderful. And then, in particular, the faculty host for the visit today, Jennifer Bickham-Mendez from Sociology and Global Studies. Jennifer's down front. Jennifer will be up here in just a moment because Jennifer will do the full introduction of our guests today. And I also want to thank the sponsors for tonight's event. I'm not going to list them because it's a long list. It's on the poster, or if you're really interested, go to the CLA website and do some digging there. So just a few housekeeping notes. What we're going to do at the end of the presentation, we're going to open things up to questions. I'll let Jennifer at the appropriate time describe how we're going to do that. So be ready. And then we're also going to have a reception for our visitors, and everyone is invited to come to that. That will not be in our usual place, but instead will be downstairs at Lodge 1, which is near the COSI, food area there. So downstairs, Lodge 1. So without more ado, Jennifer.
Well, hello, everyone. I am so excited to be here. For many of us in this room, it's been a long wait. It's been over a year of planning, and to finally have this week here is just sort of, my heart's all aflutter. So I will try to keep it short, but I'm pretty passionate and excited about our guests here today, the students and executive director from Freedom University. So the activities of this week are the result of the vision, energy, and careful planning of many people, so I do need to thank some more people too. Already recognized mi comadre and compañera de la lucha, Sylvia Tandasiars, wherever she is. Oh, she's back there. Her creative energies have been absolutely essential in planning this, as has the ever-wise Teresa Longo, who's also in the audience. Ben Boone at the Center for Liberal Arts, I think, had been in the position like a day. And we're like, guess what we're doing? And look at how this fits together with like all kinds of, and it's about the border, but it's also about here, and it's global, and it's local. And he's been great. And so I really wanted to recognize him. I want to thank Jackie Amaya Mendez, the president of the Latin American Student Union, who's here in the front row, and also publicly recognize Lasu in the house. Lasu in the house? LASSO has been amazingly active this year and has contributed in incredibly meaningful ways to hosting the visitors, because this has been a collaboration all the way between students at Freedom University, students at William & Mary, faculty, administrators, and staff. In addition to this being a Call 300 event, there's also sort of a shadow Call 300 event, you might say, that is really important to mention. And that is that this event serves as the culmination of our 2017 Border Studies program. And student participants in that program are all in the audience here tonight. Some of them will be helping out with the Q&A. And they have been absolutely key players in hosting our visitors. So Aiden Burnside, Iria Gomez-Gonzalez, Josh Arand, Isabella Dickens-Bowman, Jenny Horner, Nick Marino, and Grace Nawaldi, who are all here today. This past January, I had the pleasure to accompany them along with Professor Teresa Longo and spend a week at the US-Mexican border in the Tucson sector, where we met an amazing array of often inspiring people and learned from them. And it was an absolute honor to stand shoulder to shoulder with them as fellow travel companions on that journey. So they've also been incredibly instrumental in thinking about how this week should go down and orchestrating this visit and hosting our visitors in a way that's been fitting and we hope has been something that they have enjoyed. So I just want to give a shout out to all of them too. Now I should turn to the task at hand and introduce our visitors. Dr. Laura Emiko Soltis, Freedom University's Executive Director, and 3 students from Freedom University, Milady, Rafael, and Irene. Yes, that won't be the first time you'll applaud tonight. Freedom University was founded in 2011. They're going to tell you all about it. But I'll just say that it was founded following the Georgia Board of Regents' passage of 2 policies that in effect banned undocumented students from attending public universities in Georgia and also made them ineligible for in-state tuition. Freedom U provides education, college counseling, and leadership training to students affected by this Georgia ban. Students pay no tuition, receive no grades, and don't take tests. And I kind of want all of us to think about that for a second in the context here of William & Mary. And I kind of challenge all of us, faculty, especially faculty and students in the audience, to think about what your education would look like and what your teaching would look like if we took grades and tuition out of it, if it was only about the learning and more centered on the learning. We at William & Mary are delighted to welcome these guests to our campus. Freedom University is founded on a simple truth, and you'll hear more about that education is a human right, it is a matter of human dignity, and it should be available to all. And that's what I want us to remember tonight. So I want to make it clear also that I don't introduce our guests tonight as dreamers, for their dream does not set them apart from us. It's the same dream that inspires our collective pursuit of learning here at the university. Neither do I introduce them to you as people defined by what they lack, an ID card, a birth certificate, a 9-digit number. Today, we welcome Dr. Soltis, Irene, Milady, and Rafa as fellow educators and students, as people, not labels, who are seeking the same thing we seek, to take their place in the world as educated, critically minded people who care about ideas and care about making the world a better place. Today we welcome them because they have much to teach us about the true meaning of education and what it means to be a citizen. I think I speak for the students and faculty here at William & Mary when I say that we are here ready to learn. Thank you. And now I'm going to ask Freedom University's Executive Director, Dr. Soltis, to take the podium.
Good evening, everybody. How are you? Hi. I was told I have a limited amount of time, which is hard as a teacher with a lot of information and stories I want to share with you today. There's been a lot of thank yous, so I will just say a big thank you to everybody, all the faculty, the students, Freedom U, everyone who's hosted us and welcomed us to your classes, and all of you for being here today and taking time out of your busy lives to share in this special moment with us. So my name is Emiko Soltis, and I serve as the Executive Director of Freedom University. And this, of course, is a very fancy, ridiculous title for what I actually do. I'm a janitor, a van driver, a butterfly painter, a bail bondswoman, a mom, a teacher, an activist, and a friend. I speak to you today mainly in my role as a teacher, someone who has taught and learned from undocumented students in the classroom for the last 4 years. I'm a teacher who believes strongly in the power of organized young people. I'm a teacher who believes that schools and universities are sanctuaries for learning and must be defended. I'm a teacher who believes that education is a human right and that access to higher education should be based on academic merit and not on social status. And I want to be very clear, everything I know about undocumented students is what I've learned in dialogue with them. And it's an absolute honor to present today alongside these 3 undocumented student leaders, Irene, Milady, and Rafael, and to stand with them in their struggle for inclusion in the university and their human right to education. So my talk today will provide some national and historical context on the issue of undocumented student access to higher education and really set the stage for the powerful testimonies of the undocumented students themselves. And it'll be organized in 3 main sections. First, I'll provide some national and historical context on undocumented student access to higher education, and specifically shed light on Georgia's bans. Second, I'll discuss the grassroots resistance to these discriminatory laws and highlight the formation and current work of Freedom University. And I'll also discuss how Freedom U's liberatory education model and teaching of the human rights framework has helped students develop a critical consciousness that enables them to identify injustice, to assert their rights, and believe that things can change through collective action. And finally, I'll highlight on the acts of courageous civil disobedience and movement strategies being employed by undocumented students and allies at Freedom University. So I hope this sparks lively discussions on inclusivity and justice in higher education and the role of unrest and civil disobedience in the fight for equal access to education for all. So I think it's very important to start with facts. So it's important to know the definition of what it means to be undocumented. And the National Immigration Law Center defines undocumented as a person who is either a foreign national who entered the United States with documents and overstayed their visa, or someone who came with fraudulent documents or with no papers at all, just so we're on the same page, right? And the numbers are very important. There's approximately 11.2 million undocumented people in the United States. 2.1 million are college-age youth and young people who would otherwise qualify for the DREAM Act. As you know, the DREAM Act is failed legislation on the federal level that has failed to pass since 2001. What's very important to know is that undocumented students have the lowest matriculation rate to college. Of this 2.1 million college-age young people, about 10,000 are in college today, right? And that's 0.4%. And each year, about 65,000 undocumented young people graduate from high school every year. In Georgia, this number is estimated to be around 6,000 undocumented students graduate from high school. And most undocumented young people, again, not all, were brought to the United States by their parents at a very young age and have lived in the United States for most of their lives. Most have gone through public education, kindergarten through 12th grade. Most pay taxes, as well as their parents, through income taxes, sales tax, and individual tax ID number, the ITIN. And they currently lack a way to become citizens. And this is very important to know. You guys have all heard of the expression, why don't you go to the back of the line, right? I want to let you in on a little secret. There is no line, right? And some students at Freedom U are like, y'all, if there were a line, I'd be in it. So like, where that line though, right? Like, I want to know so I can get in it. So there is no line to become a citizen, okay? Just to make sure that we're very clear on that. And why we're even discussing the issue of undocumented student access to higher education, it's because this is not a right protected by the federal government in the United States. A very important Supreme Court case that did establish education as a right was Plyler v. Doe in 1982. Unfortunately, it only protected the right to education kindergarten through 12th grade, right? So access to higher education is up to states, individual states, to set their own policies, right? So right now, more than 20 states, about 21 states, allow undocumented students to access some form of public higher education through their state boards of education or through state legislation, and access in-state tuition if they meet state residency requirements, right? And all other states require undocumented students to pay out-of-state tuition. And this is important. It sounds kind of negligible, but out-of-state tuition is generally 60% higher than in-state tuition, requiring undocumented students who generally come from very low-income families to pay 3 times as much as the people they went from kindergarten through 12th grade with, right? It's extremely unjust, and it's an economic ban. There are 3 states, however, that actually have some form of an admission ban, preventing undocumented students from even applying to their public universities. Do you want to guess where they might be? Georgia, good. Anywhere else? Alabama, South Carolina, right? So South Carolina, Georgia, and Alabama have some form of admissions ban. What do they have in common? South, right? So welcome to the Deep South, the only places where we have actual admissions ban against undocumented students. South Carolina and Alabama have full statewide bans, but they allow DACA students, students with deferred action, to apply. Georgia does not allow students with DACA to come to the public universities. So this brings us home to Georgia. And I'm going to share the story now as fast as I can of how students mobilized to fight back against these policies. So this actually was rather recent in 2010. A student named Jessica at Kennesaw State University was pulling into a parking space her senior year of college. She failed to turn on her blinker, so she was pulled over by a campus police officer who asked her for a driver's license, and she admitted that she did not have one. She was taken to jail where she admitted she was undocumented. That evening, she was taken to Alabama to an immigrant detention center, and deportation proceedings began against her. And this sparked 2 things. The anti-immigrant movement in Georgia, primarily on the right, legislators started furiously crafting legislation based on this notion that undocumented students were flooding the university system of Georgia. But it also sparked the modern immigrant rights movement in Georgia as well, which is really important. Students at Kennesaw State University mobilized and were able to get her out of deportation proceedings and allow her to finish her senior year, and she eventually got DACA and is still in Georgia today. I'm just gonna let you look at this photo for a second, actually. This is the Georgia Board of Regents that sets educational policy in Georgia. So as you may notice, of the 19 members, there are 2 women, 2 people of color, and 1 educator. The others are CEOs of beer distribution companies and energy corporations. And in that fall of 2010, just 7 months after this case of Jessica Coloto, they passed 2 restrictive policies. Policy 416, which bans undocumented students from the top 5 public universities, and Policy 434, which bans them from in-state tuition throughout the state of Georgia. The most important thing to know is that students immediately fought back. The following year, when the bans went into place, undocumented student activists, immigrant rights activists, and teachers met up in Athens, Georgia, and tried to decide how they could fight against this ban. The teachers were like, do you want us to strike? Do you want us to sign petitions? What do you want us to do? And the undocumented students told them, why don't you guys do what you do best and teach us? So the idea of forming a school where they could actually resist the ban by continuing the education of undocumented young people was born. So Freedom University began in the fall of 2011, and we continue to provide college-level classes taught by teachers for free, college application and scholarship assistance, and social movement leadership training for undocumented students banned from college in Georgia. And Freedom University's name was chosen for 2 really important reasons. One, it recognizes and pays respect to the legacy of the Southern Freedom School tradition, which was a part of Freedom Summer in the summer of 1964, which was a lot of people know about Freedom Summer for the civil rights activists and young people who registered citizens to vote. A lot of people don't know that they also started freedom schools to educate people and to build leaders from the grassroots. But Freedom University, its name was also chosen because students recognized it had an amazing, amazing acronym that never gets old. So Freedom University, Georgia, and our FU Georgia t-shirts sell like hotcakes in Georgia, and honestly gives us a lot of life, especially for our classes, such as the FU debate team, the FU singers, FU math, definitely FU standardized test prep, and FU poetry. I would love to get more into our classes and the pedagogy of what we do, and I'll touch on it in a moment, but just know that we provide a variety of college-level classes in the humanities and the sciences and leadership training based on human rights and social justice. In addition to our classes, we also do a lot of community engagement like this. So Freedom University students take a lot of what they learn in the classroom and share their stories, their testimonies, and really debunk a lot of myths regarding immigration and really humanize the story of undocumented youth. And the important part about this is we also do college tours. Every November we go on a 10-day trip to the Northeast and stop at colleges such as Harvard, Yale, Dartmouth, Smith, Mount Holyoke, Eastern Connecticut State University, Bard, and many, many others. And students present in classes, on panels, interview at these colleges, and as a result, we've not only changed the admissions policies at many of these universities, but 1 out of 5 students at Freedom University earns a full ride scholarship to a college out of state as a result of these tours and engaging with the community. And finally, in addition to the classes, the community engagement, undocumented students at Freedom U are unique in that they are also engaging in creative, nonviolent civil disobedience in order to change these policies. And at the core of our movement engagement is a very simple philosophy, and that is that what is needed for social change to happen is both consciousness and commitment. We know the people right on Facebook who are very politically conscious and they go to town, but they'd never show up to actual actions or put anything in the game, right? We also know the people who love posting Facebook photos of themselves at marches, but don't actually engage in the political consciousness or the dialogue that's necessary, right, to build trust. I'm seeing some serious head nods, so this is true, right? And really briefly, at Freedom University, our philosophy is that consciousness isn't this abstract idea, but really is comprised of 3 important points. In order for liberation or collective action to happen, people have to have these necessary cognitions. One of them is this idea of a collective identity, of undocumented students and allies being able to see themselves in each other, right? To build trust and this new idea that we are something cohesive, and we can fight together. The second is a recognition of injustice, which usually requires a change in consciousness that the experience of oppression isn't a result of individual failure, but a result of a structural injustice, right? And this also requires an assertion of rights, right? That comes with the idea of some injustice. It's not just, I can't make it to university because my parents committed a crime, but this is actually a structural issue trying to ban certain people from college, and I have a right to education, right? That's a huge cognitive shift. And finally, a belief that things can change through collective action, right? Not only are these policies up for debate and that they can change, but it will change because people mobilize against it, not because certain people in power have a change of heart, right? And so at Freedom University, we try and harness this new collective identity by providing a safe space in our college classrooms, where suddenly a lot of students, I love your faces right now, or a lot of students actually share for the first time things that they've kept to themselves, reasons why they don't have a driver's license or why they're not in college. A lot of really good young people end up being fantastic liars in order to survive, right? And the emotional impact that has on people, right? To always make excuses about why they're not doing normal things for people their age, right? But suddenly in this space, it's normal, right? And all of that shame and all of those lies can just kind of melt away, and people can start building new relationships built on a collective identity. And a recognition of injustice, we harness this mainly at Freedom University by teaching a human rights framework rather than a US constitutional framework, where rights are inalienable based on one's humanity, right? Not on their citizenship in relationship to a state or to a government. Regardless of where you are born on this planet, on which side of a man-made border, or what border you may cross, right? And this is enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in particular, which states in Article 26 that all people have the right to education, and that higher education shall be made available to all on the basis of merit. And this was written in 1948, right? And yet, 60, 70 years later, we're still struggling in the United States to recognize this right. And you see a little acronym at the end, DACA. I just want to make sure everyone is on the same page as to what DACA is and how we recognize and critically analyze things that even the immigrant rights community is taught to believe is a solution. DACA stands for Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. It was a presidential memorandum during the Obama administration that went into effect in June 2012. DACA is important because it provides three things: a reprieve from deportation, so protection from deportation proceedings, a driver's license, and a work permit. For a lot of undocumented youth, this was a huge relief. They could drive without being scared constantly of being pulled over by police, possibly deported, but they could also work and contribute to their families. However, at Freedom University, with a critical consciousness perspective, we look at more structural issues and taking a step back and looking at what DACA is actually making legitimate. DACA is creating a situation, especially in states like Georgia, where it is perfectly normal and legal for a large population of young people of color to legally drive to low-wage jobs, but be denied the access to higher education and the right to vote. And if that sounds familiar, it should, and that was Jim Crow, right? And it's really important to know that these policies were passed on the 50th anniversary of the desegregation of the University of Georgia, right? So when UGA was literally, you should be doing this, right? So literally, Georgia was having panels and parties and celebrations about desegregation while simultaneously passing policies to ban young people of color, right? And so this recognition of injustice even applies to things like DACA, right? Sorry, I had a slide for it. Whoops. Okay, so the third part, belief that things can change through collective action. In Atlanta, we're very fortunate to have a lot of veterans of the civil rights movement, and SNCC veterans in particular, SNCC standing for the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, who act as mentors to our students. And this is really important because a lot of times if young people are taught about the civil rights movement, they're often taught about one or two or maybe three individual leaders, right? But they are definitely not taught about mass civil disobedience. They aren't taught about women leaders, and they definitely aren't taught about young people, right? That some of the most divisive and the most courageous actions were waged by young people. The freedom rides, the sit-ins, Freedom Summer, right? And that the desegregation of public universities in the South were waged for and won by young people, right? 18, 19, and 20-year-olds were the ones who were developing these campaigns and putting everything on the line. And when undocumented students learn this history that young people fought and won in the past, it completely changes their mindset and consciousness that it is possible to also change these policies in Georgia. So again, in addition to consciousness is this providing of opportunities for commitment. And at Freedom University, we have a multi-level strategy for how we engage in direct action. And our strategies are multi-leveled in terms of local to global. At the very local level, we are committed to shaming the Board of Regents, right? The actual body that is banning undocumented students. We also, as a part of our direct actions, desegregate public universities by having our direct actions in the classrooms themselves, holding it in these classrooms because it is here where these policies are actually going into play, which is removing perfectly qualified students from the classrooms and preventing undocumented and documented students from learning together, right? I'm terrible at quoting people, but there's a Thurgood Marshall quote that says something like, unless our students can learn together, how can they ever live together? Right? So there is a purpose to segregation, and it is to create a divided populace that is unaware of each other's experience, right? And that is the beauty of a college classroom, and that is really what's at stake at segregationist policies, is keeping students apart. And so that is why we do our actions at these public universities. We also attempt to change admissions policies at private universities across the country. And as a result of building alliances with documented student groups, we've changed the policies at Emory University in Atlanta, Soka University out in California, Bard College, Smith College, and many others. We also are part of a federal lawsuit that's argued by MALDEF, the Mexican American Legal Defense and Education Fund. Freedom University is an organizational plaintiff that is suing every single member of the Board of Regents and every president of a public university in Georgia for damages for violating our students' right to equal protection under the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. Boom. So that's fun. And this is important because it's based on this in-state tuition ban, and we're not putting all of our eggs in one basket and putting everything on winning this case, but if this case were to win, for example, it would set precedents and change in-state tuition throughout the country. And finally, we're using international human rights frameworks to shame Georgia in the international human rights arena, in the Inter-American Court of Human Rights, and the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, and the Special Rapporteur on Education and Migration. So lots of big words. And to prove it, I have some photos, so I can also breathe. This photo, by the way, cracks me up because the students originally had formed a circle around the Board of Regents. They have public hearings every month, and we like to tease them by holding them every few months, and they never know when we're coming. But students linked arm in arm, documented and undocumented, with their fists up in the air. Clearly we didn't practice because it's actually really hard to hold your hand up in the air for more than 5 minutes. So we would switch, and the Board of Regents tried to carry on their meeting, but they were shaking and they were looking down, they couldn't concentrate. So finally, the chancellor passes a new rule. If you're going to be at the Board of Regents meeting, you need to be in your seat. So they all said, yay, we agree. And so this new policy passed that you have to be in your seat if you're at the Board of Regents meeting. So the students went back to their seats and we're like, crap. And then on GroupMe, everyone started giggling and we put our phones away. And then we stood on our chairs and continued. And so that's that photo, and it cracks me up. But anyway, so we are annoyingly persistent, which is actually a social movement tactic, at the Board of Regents, and making sure that they can see the students who they are banning from college. And here's a photo of one of our direct actions in the university classroom. Right? The students are wearing hand-painted butterfly wings to symbolize, of monarch butterflies, to symbolize transformation, that migration is beautiful and a natural thing. Right? And after this, 9 students were arrested and pulled from the classroom. So you actually have photos of policemen arresting butterflies. And this is a victory photo of undocumented students from Freedom University and our allies at Emory after they won a change of admissions policy at Emory, who also announced that they would provide full need-based aid to undocumented students. So that was a huge victory, especially in Georgia. Our lawsuits in federal court, and the use of UN human rights mechanisms. And I'm guessing my time is running short, so I want to kind of open up ideas for the Q&A and for context for the students that we've all, as we all know, entered a new era in politics and our reality. And Freedom University is engaging with students around the country in terms of sanctuary policies, both on campus and in cities. And I think it's important to note that Freedom University probably engaged in the first act of civil disobedience in the Trump era. About 6 hours after we found out about the election results, we disrupted a Board of Regents hearing that happened on Wednesday, November 9th. This was during an interfaith prayer. Police surrounded the students and threatened to arrest them. On February 14th, Valentine's Day, these Board of Regents hearings fall on awesome days, guys. But on Valentine's Day, we took advantage of that day and named it "Justice is what love looks like in public," which is a Cornel West quote. And that is actually Milady there, who's throwing carnations at the Board of Regents after delivering handmade Valentines and chocolates and saying that we love you, even if you are banning us from college, and we hope you do the right thing. And briefly, through photographs, I also want to highlight that Freedom University doesn't only fight for the rights of undocumented students. Our students are diverse in themselves in terms of racial background, LGBTQ identity. They are workers, and they are also religiously diverse and participate in actions in solidarity with other movements as well, such as Black Lives Matter, the Fight for 15 movement for a livable wage, farm worker justice, LGBTQ rights, and religious freedom. So what can you do? Of course, raise consciousness. And I'm glad you guys are here because you are committed to doing that. There's a lot of resources on Freedom University's websites, which sounds very cliche, but I'm not joking. We have lots of resources. So go there if you want to write a research paper or learn anything. Also, educate others, invite people to class, have these discussions in your classrooms, awkward family conversations with your friends. It's just really important to talk about this now that you have this knowledge, right? And of course, stay committed. I want to talk about sanctuary campus movements later, but a really important resource is the demands articulated by the Emory Sanctuary Coalition, which is available there. And also keep in touch with Freedom University. We have a great Twitter, which is FU Georgia, Freedom U Georgia Facebook, and our website, etc. But that is it for me. And please welcome the students to the stage, and they're going to share their testimonies of being undocumented student leaders in Georgia. Thank you.
Hey guys, well my name's Irene, and I would like to start off by talking to you guys about how I came to the United States. I crossed the border 2 times, once when I was 1 year old, and my mom told me this story. So she said that we crossed the Rio Grande in what appeared like a tire, and she calls una llanta. And she said that she was really scared because I was crying the whole time that they were pushing us. She said she was scared because a lot of immigration people were looking for other people at that time. She said that we were able to cross safely and hide in the woods. After that, she said she remembered we had to wait there for a long time. So I was just crying the whole time that we were there. And soon a car came for us that took us to a safe house, and from there brought us all the way to Georgia. And after that, she said we moved back to Mexico for like a year or 2, and I came back when I was 3 years old. And by that time, she said one of her family members let us use their visas. So I became a boy. I crossed the border as a boy, and my mom became my aunt. And she said throughout that time also, I was crying, so she was so scared also because she thought that they were gonna ask her, is that your daughter? Since in the paperwork it said I was, her nephew. So, and she thought that they would find out that I was a girl and not a guy. So yeah, and that's how I came to live in Georgia. Thank you.
Thank you, Irene. Okay, my name is Rafael. I'm going to speak to you guys briefly about my experiences growing up as an undocumented student and just person in Georgia. So I got here when I was 6 years old, turning 7, and since the beginning, I was very cognizant of the fact that we had crossed the border without documents. And so throughout my whole childhood, I knew I was undocumented. I knew I was different, and I knew from what my parents had told me that I did not have all of the same rights that my friends and peers did in school with me. I also knew that because of this, if I ever wanted to make anything of myself in life, I would have to work 3 or 4 times as hard as everyone else. And so in knowing this, I remember going through school, studying everything I could as soon as possible, you know. As much as possible. I remember being in 5th grade, like studying physics concepts that I wouldn't hear about until I was in high school later on. So my childhood was a bit strange in the sense that I didn't get to enjoy being a little kid, I guess. I didn't get to enjoy playing or anything because I had this understanding that we were not equal to people who were citizens, and that because of this inequality, there was nothing that I could do to level the playing field other than just work as hard as I could. I remember in high school when I first started trying to have like a social life, how a normal teenager would. I was very limited in doing things. I couldn't go out with my friends. I couldn't drive anywhere because I had no license. If I tried to drive and got pulled over, it would be a life-changing situation for me. You know, I would be a young 16, 17-year-old kid ripped away from his parents, from his family, sent to a country that he knew nothing about. And so I guess growing up undocumented in Georgia is an experience that is full of fright, I guess, fear of yourself being deported or your parents being deported, and of a big struggle, a struggle to overcome despite all of the odds that are stacked against us. But that's my experience growing up undocumented. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Milady. I'm going to speak to you about my involvement with Freedom U. Like Rafa, I also had a very similar upbringing where you lose your teenage years and you're making a lot of excuses as to why you can't drive, why you don't have that job, why you can't hang out. And instead of it pushing me forward like it did for him, I think I kind of retracted within myself and I stopped paying attention at all at school. I like learning, but if I wasn't going to get anything out of it, what was really the point? Like, in my mind, I was going to go straight into the workforce, so there was no point in really focusing on, like math and like science. And so, yeah, I mean, I managed to get a 3.0. I do not know how I did. I did nothing in high school, guys. And I managed to get a 3.0, but I didn't apply to any colleges. And I was constantly reminded that I was undocumented because in all the standardized tests, it's like social security number. And I'm like looking around like, is anybody gonna notice that I don't have a social security number? So I went straight into the workforce. I graduated, go straight into the workforce. And I think I was 2 years in before deferred action kicked in. I was 20 years old when that 2012 deferred action happened. So I got to experience having to get a New Mexico license because in Georgia they don't give us licenses. So I paid maybe $4,000 that I had already earned. To be fair, I paid $4,000 to drive all the way to New Mexico, take a test, which I failed and I cried for, and then they let me retake and I passed the second time, and then drive all the way back, and that eased some of the tension. But then there was also working without a social security number. So for those 2 years, I would get letters saying, your social security number is incorrect or something. Make sure to contact. I'd turn to my parents. I'd be like, what do I do? And they were like, ignore it. Like, it'll be okay. And so when DACA kicks in, I am really excited. I'm going to drive. I'm going to go to school. And then, like, it hits me because I knew this, but it didn't hit me until I received DACA. I live in Georgia, and like I can't go to these universities, and I have to pay out of state. So, I mean, I worked my butt off, and I got myself through 2 years of community college. And I kept telling them, because I heard about Freedom University, because the girl that you saw getting arrested in Butterfly Wings was actually a friend of mine. And so I was like, am I going to keep sitting here and letting people fight my battles for me? Like, can I really live with myself if I keep benefiting from DACA and these social movements and not get involved? So when I realized that I was like, I guess I could have kept going to school, but I was like, I think this is the time. Like, this is the time where I get involved and see where it takes me. So I came to Freedom University, and I met Emiko, and I met Rafa and Irene and a lot of other people. And it's changed my life in that, as she says, it is the first time that I think I've ever, I guess, felt comfortable being like, yes, I don't have papers. I went through this, and this. I crossed the border like this, guys. How did you cross the border? And like, not everybody else is gonna share that story with you. The learning is so important that the teachers would dedicate their time to. I think it shows you that people care. I became so cynical for a while because it seemed like the world had kind of like turned against me and people like me. But then going into Freedom University and seeing that there are teachers who are willing to take like an hour and something out of their days where they could be resting to teach us, it makes me realize that change can happen. And so getting involved was important and it did matter. That action, it completely changed like so much of my life. Because when I was trying to place the carnations on their seats, a lady stopped me and was like, no, you can't leave them there. I'm like, I'm just trying to give them flowers. She's like, throw them on the floor. So I was like, okay. And so I started throwing them on the floor. And as I'm passing by, one of the guys turned to his friend, or the Board of Regents guys turned to his friend and was like, if these teachers really cared about their students, they'd be in schools teaching them and not out here disrupting our meetings. And so that was harsh because it made me realize that they're not even aware that they would be teaching us, but we can't go to school. So that's my experience of Freedom University, and I'm sure they have similar, if not better, experiences because we've all really opened up. Thank you for hosting us. And I think we're gonna go into a Q&A now, right?
Is it on now? Yes. Okay, so we're going to do a short question and answer, and you will see the 2017 Border Studies students in their lovely FU Georgia t-shirts who are coming down the aisles now. If you would like to submit a question to pose to Dr. Soltis or to the students, you can raise your hand, and they will bring you an index card. So I'm going to raise your hand if you want to ask a question. And you can up here, and then they will collect your question and bring it down to be read. While we're doing that, we have a couple of questions here. One question that I thought we could start with. Well, I can give this. Jackie Amaya Mendez is also going to be co-moderating with me, so I'm going to give her this question and have her read it.
Hi, guys. So the question is, could you talk about what the word illegal means to you?
Okay. So to me personally, as I mentioned earlier, I was aware for most of my childhood that I was undocumented. And when I was a kid, we didn't have the word undocumented yet. The movement hadn't really progressed to that point where we had labeled ourselves as something. And so I was told I was illegal by my parents, by my family members, by everyone. People who cared about me and also people who didn't care about the people in my situation. And so the word illegal to me personally didn't have very many negative connotations. It was only until I got a bit older and started learning about how we use language to dehumanize and to criminalize specific groups of people, that I understood why the distinction between illegal and undocumented is so important. Because in reality, no human being can be illegal. And if you think about it, the borders that we draw are arbitrary and imaginary to a certain extent. And so I guess we like to use the term undocumented because we are here and we are human and we do deserve basic human rights. And the fact that we don't have a piece of paper or documentation does not negate that. and we don't want to use the word illegal because it does dehumanize us. Do you any of you want to?
Obviously, I won't speak from personal experience, but I do want to say, as someone who is a citizen of the United States, that I think also the word undocumented is rather ludicrous because they have way more documents than I do. Like, they're the most documented, undocumented people, right? Like, literally, when we came here, they all brought 3 forms of identification. And I brought my driver's license. But yet, they're the ones called undocumented. So I think it's actually, yes, let's use that term, but it's actually really ridiculous, right? That a lot of undocumented people have files and files of documentation and applications for citizenship and denials and deferred action applications, right? And I have no idea where my birth certificate is, right? Like, I hope my mom has it somewhere in Minnesota, but I'm called documented and they're called undocumented, and it really emphasizes how arbitrary that these terms are and what citizenship really is, right?
Is there a law in place that protects the school? What exactly keeps the government from shutting Freedom University down?
So are there any laws that...
Are there any laws in place that protect your school? And what actually keeps the government from shutting Freedom University down?
I think there are several laws to protect us, like freedom of speech, I hope, freedom of association, protection from unreasonable search and seizure. Let's see if these laws and rights really persist through the next few years, but there should be laws in place to protect us. But we're also cautious in the sense that we don't publish where we meet, so we definitely don't taunt people to come find us or target students. And people who are involved with Freedom University are vetted to some degree and meet with staff and faculty to build trust before they volunteer as a driver to pick up students to class or if they teach. But I will be realistic, we do get a lot of hate mail. And I actually have someone to check those emails for me so I don't see them. But we try not to focus on the scary stuff because that would prevent us from doing any important work. But I think there is the Bill of Rights that I think still is valid. So those are the laws set to protect us.
Okay, the next question is about sort of about your visit here and other college visits that you do. The audience member says, what is most heartening to you all about visits like this, and what perhaps bothers you about them, or perhaps you don't like about them? What's the most heartening to you all about visits like this? Heartening, sorry, cold. And is there anything that maybe bothers you about coming on these visits?
Well, since this is my first visit
Yeah.
ever, I feel the thing I like the most is that the students were really welcoming. And they were really nice. And they took the chance to know us as people. And you guys?
Yeah, I want to speak to that too. I want to say thank you too. No, it has really been a wonderful experience. The students who have hosted us have been so great to us. And not only has it been constant just dialogue and talking and but they've also taken us out to different places and we've had a lot of fun. We actually went mini golfing yesterday. It was really cool. But also the professors, the professors whose classes we visited have been wonderful. Milady will probably talk more. Yes. But we really get to see how the people that sympathize with our movement use the power that they have or the influence that they have to really get to the students that they teach. And that really means a lot to us because as students, you guys are future constituents or current constituents and voters and people who will have an impact on our lives as well. And yeah. And that means a lot to us.
Am I still answering that question? Okay. The people, I guess, were surprising. I don't really know what to expect from Virginia. I expected kind of Vermont, and so that was interesting. I think that the people were very welcoming. They spoke Spanish, which is the first time I've really seen I've seen this, but I like that, and I did, and I guess was part of the question like what we were scared of on
I'm
these
not
shows?
scared. I think the person was just, is there anything that you don't like about these kinds of visits or that bothers you is the wording of the question.
I guess it's always scary not to know what you're getting yourself into. Like, as I said, you don't know, like, you could come into a place and someone could be like, oh, boo, you suck. And not even go back to Georgia, but like, boo, you suck, go back to Mexico. And then you're like, oh, that's so sad. But so, like, I wanted people to be nice to me. So I guess that's what's scary. But I mean, other than that, I haven't been afraid at all this whole trip. Like, I've been very secure, safe, the funniest people I've ever met. So it's been nice, it's been good.
I think we have time for another. What are some common misconceptions about undocumented immigrants?
Okay, this is something that frustrates me a lot because I always see people who know nothing about immigrants talking poorly on immigrants, like members of certain groups that just hate us because, and then they list the reasons why they hate us. They hate us because we participate in your elections, so we vote and we like skew the vote. No, we don't. We don't vote. It's like some people that should be able to vote can't vote because of like voter suppression. So like, no, we definitely don't vote because we take from like, we take like state welfare and things like that. We don't have social security numbers. Like we can't, it's impossible. Like, just no. Oh, that we don't pay taxes. Yes, thank you. We have, in a way, been keeping the Social Security fund alive because we pay into it and never benefit from it. We never get anything out of it. So go tell your grandparents to thank an illegal immigrant, please, an undocumented immigrant. Like, we're writing the checks. But yes, those are like the 4 main misconceptions.
We have time for one last question.
Okay. I think Milady will really like this question. How can faculty out of state contribute to FU? Can we teach courses online? Well, for Emiko too.
What? That is actually a really good idea. And if you can teach courses online, you teach some courses online because, yeah, I mean, first of all, we're already always online anyway, so I mean, doing it for a good reason would be really good. And I actually, when I was going to community college, had to take, I would say maybe 90% of my classes online because it was like $100 per class for online, and it was like $3,000 for me to like attend a class. So I kind of, and I learned really well, and I would like to see your faces again. It'd be cool if you could do that. And another thing that would really help is to just continue doing what you do here. Like the fact that you're letting your students know that this is a problem and that you make them read like the coolest literature to open up their minds and listen to podcasts and
Crushing on Rio.
Right, Rio. Just keep doing that, spreading awareness. Keep teaching them that they don't have to read so much to learn well. Yeah. Do you have something to say to the teachers?
I mean, to teach online? Yeah, no, I think you pretty much got it. Thank you.
Well, I think we're out of time, but many people wrote some great questions, so I'm really sorry that we're out of time. If you wrote one of these great questions, you can feel free to approach our visitors at the reception, which is being held, I can't remember, where's Jean? Lodge 1 downstairs. Join us for a reception, and thank you all for coming and being part of tonight.